Hey everyone, welcome back. Now on to a very fun topic, parallax. Now, parallax is a very simple topic, but it has a lot of practical applications where it can get a little bit tricky. Still not that bad, but that's mostly what we're going to be talking about in this video. I'm going to briefly define parallax for you real quick, but then we're going to go over where you need to know it as a compositor and show you some different shot examples and how they're all working. So parallax is when closer objects seem to move faster than farther ones from an observer's perspective. It's the classic phenomenon where you're looking out the car window and the things that are close to you appear to be moving faster, and the things that are farther away, like the mountains and stuff, appear to be moving slower. You can look at it from a side angle like this, or you can look at it like this. The things that are close to you seem to be zooming by, and then the stuff that's farther away is slow, when in reality, if you looked at your car from above, nothing's moving at all. You're just the one moving, and it's only how things appear from your perspective. So it's a physical phenomena. It's a way to help humans perceive depth. It's a depth cue. By the way, this shot originally looks like this, and I'm doing some stabilization tricks like from the last video. If you want to come in and look at how I'm doing that, very, very simple, straightforward, but that's not what we're here to talk about. And I made a little 3D visualizer just to drive the point home. As you can see, it's everything I've been talking about. And if we look at this from above, you can kind of understand a little bit more about how it works, because this camera is showing the little field of view. So the ball that's closer to the camera travels farther within this field of view than the cylinder all the way in the back, right? Even though none of them are moving, based on the camera's perspective, that's how things appear. Okay, you get it. So why is this relevant when compositing? Well, we often need to fake this parallax effect because the background we're going to be adding to our footage needs to be farther away than the background we tracked in the plate. What does that mean? So we're going to go over 3D parallax and faking 3D parallax, and then 2D. But to show you what I'm talking about, we have this amazing stock footage. I don't know what they were thinking when they filmed this, but I am eternally grateful. And we have a whole sequence of these shots that we're going to go through. But as you can see, the background with the tracking markers is like 5 feet behind this guy, something like that. And we're going to be adding, let me just merge these, this background behind him. And here's a sneak peek at our final shot. So these trees back here are much farther away than this background here that we're tracking, right? So when we get tracking data from this information, we're somehow gonna need to push our background farther away, okay? And there's a different approach for doing that in 3D versus doing it in 2D. Let's look at the 3D first, but before I show you, here's the 3D camera track, which we're gonna go over in a couple sections still in this course, but after we go over advanced tracking. But I think it's good to show you the 3D camera track here, because this one was very straightforward. I just did a little bit of pre-processing, which is the next video. Basically, just something that's gonna help the tracker get a better track sometimes. And this track was very, very straightforward. It got it with a really good result on the first go. But something you should know is that 3D camera trackers actually require parallax in the footage to achieve an accurate solve. And it has to do with how 3D cameras work. They basically take tracking data at different depths and triangulate that position. So they need this kind of Z movement, if you will, a lot of the time to get an accurate track. If we tried to feed a 3D camera tracker into a shot like this, where there's no depth movement, it can't discern the distance between points. It can't tell where the camera is. That's the whole point of a 3D camera tracker, is to try and discern where the camera is based on the movement of the footage. And so this shot is perfect for a 3D camera track. We've got movement down here that you can especially see when we pre-process our track. And then we've got movement down here and even movement on him. And you usually don't want to track the person, but he was so still in this shot that I didn't care to track him, and I thought the data would actually help with the track. Typically, that's something you don't do, but in this case, it was fine. So we got a 3D camera track, and also from this track, we converted the 3D data into a 2D track with a corner pin, and we'll show you how to do that as well. But basically what we're doing is we're building the background in 3D space. So if we look at this image, it's obviously not moving, it's just an image. We want to make a ground plane and put this image on that, and then just make another piece of geometry that we can stick this part of the image on. We want to separate them like this. So when the camera moves, we get that parallax effect, as you can see. Really cool. We're doing a technique called projection mapping for this, and that's something I cover in the technical compositing course, which may or may not be out right now. Doesn't matter. Very simple technique, but that's not what we're here for. And so we also want to put this background back there. And let me just show you the problem. If I grab this card and plug the background into it like this, let me just back it up a little bit in Z space like that, so it's behind that one. If we were to do something like that and look at our output, we would get something like this. So the parallax on the ground is working, but the background back there just looks like it's stuck to the back wall. Doesn't look good at all. And maybe you can imagine what we can do to fix that. We can go into 3D space again and push this card even farther back. And because we're projecting that image, we're gonna need to scale up our card as well. Right now, I'm kind of just going by eye. Ideally, in a professional setting, we'll hopefully have data from an on-set data wrangler or our match move department who solved our 3D camera, gave us some data so we know how far things should be. In a professional setting, we'll basically just have more data to know where we might need to put this. But in a shot like this, where I'm just using stock footage for everything and I don't have any data to know how far back this should go, my best bet's probably just gonna be to eyeball it and see what looks and feels good to my eye. But I'm glad I'm working this way because, like I've said, I'm showing you high-end workflows in this course and more lower-end stuff, which is what I started out on before I got to feature film, where you're just given a shot and they're just like, make it look good, or they'll say they have no budget and they'll give you stock footage. Like I said, I've put stock footage in many musicians and music videos, and you're just forced to make it work. Okay, so let's just say that that's good, and we can test it by just watching the final result and just get a feel for the parallax. And honestly, I already think that looks pretty good. You can see how much more depth this whole shot has now, and this is all just from one image. And if we really wanted to, we could break up this image into even more layers. We could separate this background back here and do the sky as its own layer and just push them all slightly farther and farther back, and it'll give it a really nice depth effect. Projections, I think, are severely underutilized nowadays in VFX. They're such a powerful technique. I love them so much. But let's just say that's good and look at our final result. Okay, and that looks pretty decent. I just slapped this together, but pretty fun shot, I think. And if you're interested in how I integrated him, it's very, very simple setup. Literally 4 nodes for the integration. Very basic relighting. All stuff covered in the integration course, but you can download the script, come in and look for yourself. In all of these, I kind of recommend you do that if you want, because this is good to see how I'm taking one setup and applying the same setup to different angles. This is so common in VFX, where we have that hero angle and then have other angles that other artists are going to copy that hero setup onto. So let's look at this angle first, turning this into this. We've got the setup already done, but there's no tracking right now. Okay, so that's our goal, is to figure out how we're going to track this. And like I already said, we're probably not going to be able to get a 3D camera solve from this, and we probably wouldn't even want to, because with this 2D parallax trick, so often it's just better to do this because of how quick it is. I like to avoid 3D anytime I can do something in 2D, because 2D is just so much faster. So just did a basic track here, 2-point track, translation, rotation, nothing you haven't seen already. Don't need to go over that. Let's just output a tracker, check our reference frame. As you know, when I do baked trackers, I like to label the reference frame for my future self and anyone else who might come into the script. And let's just plug these into this image and this image. We're gonna treat them both separately so we can make them move separately. Now, let's show you how this works. Let's go down here to show you the actual math of how we fake 2D parallax. And let's use this shot example. Right now, we've got this little guy tracked on, like we saw in the first tracking video. So what I wanna do is just take this element and add him to this shot at like different depths. So how this parallax trick works is actually exactly like we saw in the last video in the stabilization section, where we're taking our animation curve and just adding multiplication to it. We don't need to make a variable again like we did here, but you can if you want for the parallax. Sometimes it's actually easier to do that. But here, let's just add some multiplication to see what we get. And I'm gonna copy this transform over, and I'm gonna also do some separate defocus for each of these so we can fake depth even more. I'll just pull this down. Let's move this one. First, let's scale it up. And right now it's got the same tracker, so it's gonna appear to be at the exact same depth as the cup. But if I go into this animation curve and multiply it, and for now, let's just double it like that. And we can look at our curve editor to see what happened when I hit enter. Boop. It's literally just scaling our animation curve. So now when we watch this back, we're getting this kind of trippy effect. Pretty cool, huh? It looks like it's closer to the camera. And side note, we only ever have to do this expression to our translation, the scale and rotation. We don't need to touch those. But let's add another one. We'll do one more, put it right here, even closer to camera, and then I'll put one back here and show you how to make things appear farther away for the last one. Actually plug it here. Merge, and let's make 2 times. Oh, maybe that's too big. Let's plug it like right in there, and I'll move this one over here, something like that. And I'm gonna add the defocus and increase the defocus for each of these as they get closer to camera. And I'm gonna have to eyeball this one because I don't really know. And I actually won't really know until I see it in motion because I don't know how close it actually is to the camera. So I'm just gonna say 35 for now. And lastly, let's do the one that's farther away. Let's copy the original transform, merge this over here, and let's scale them down just 0.1 like that. So to make this guy seem farther away, you can still use multiplication, but instead of saying a number above 1, you can multiply a number below 1. So 0.5 would scale your animation curve down. What I like to do, I usually like to use division when pushing things farther away. So if I say divided by 2, it's the same thing as saying times 0.5. But I just like to use division. Now, you usually have to be subtle when pushing things farther away. So I'm going to say something like 1.2. Don't know how that'll look yet. Again, sometimes this is a iterative process. You have to put in a value, see how it looks, and then change the value until you get something that you like. That's why it can be good to make a variable for this like we saw in the stabilization video if you want. And if you don't know how to do that, just go watch the last video. And let's just put another defocus, and I'll just say like 15 pixels, something like that. Pretty cool. I'd probably put this one a little farther back, but this one looks to be at the right distance. But yeah, this one in the middle here feels a little bit too close to camera. I'd probably do something like 1.5, or I could even do 1.25. 1.25. Yeah, that looks much better. So pretty cool effect. Now let's go ahead and do it for both of these shots. So right now the background is completely stuck to this wall. And to be honest, it doesn't even look that bad, but when I scrub it like this, I do kind of want to feel that parallax. This is usually a subtle effect. And when things are handheld especially, parallax is really subtle. If things are on a tripod, there's virtually no parallax. It just depends on how far your camera's sensor is from the thing that's actually pivoting. But in general, it's good to add a little bit of subtle parallax to backgrounds. So let's just say, we'll do that same value, 1.25. You got to be careful because when pushing things back and scaling your animation curve down, sometimes it can be a little extreme. Oh yeah, that looks good. See, it's really subtle, but your eye can pick up on it. If you look in these areas, anywhere where there's intersections, it's subtle, but it's just like a nice little chef's kiss. And the human eye can pick up on that kind of stuff. So let's do the same thing for the last shot real quick. We've got a tracker doing a little bit of pre-processing, get a baked transform, label our reference frame, plug it into both of these guys, this image and this image. Let's just try the same value on this one to see if that works. Let's do let's just say 1.2. Hit OK. View the final. Hey, I think that looks pretty good. The movement's so subtle in this one. Yeah, but if you look over here, you actually can see the parallax doing its thing. It's so subtle. If I was supervising this project, I would be looking for that. Yeah, I'd say that's good. Okay, that's it for now. In the next video, we're talking about pre-processing, and then after that, we're finally gonna get into the advanced tracking stuff. So I'll see you guys there.